Hello and welcome to Reed Scholars Live. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Fleming, current president of Reed Scholars. Today, I am joined by Dr. Mulligan-Guy. Dr. Mulligan-Guy is currently the Assistant Dean of the Office of Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity in the College of Science and Mathematics at Auburn University. Dr. Mulligan-Guy earned her bachelor's degree and master's degree in chemistry at Florida A&M in Tallahassee before pursuing her PhD in molecular physiology and biophysics at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. As assistant dean, she works to develop and implement initiatives which create an inclusive environment for a diverse student body, faculty, and staff, particularly those from traditionally underrepresented groups in STEM. Welcome so much. Welcome. I said welcome so much. Welcome today. How are you doing? Where are you at? How are things going for you down in Auburn?
Hello. Thank you for having me, Dr. Fleming. I'm so excited to be here today. I am currently in Opelika, which is, Auburn and Opelika are the same thing basically, but like a little small town right outside of Auburn, which is another small college town, right? And so I'm at home. Been here since March, like everybody else, and making it work.
One day at a time, one day at a time.
One day at a time, because who knew that we would still be here in July?
Yeah, in July. Well, take us back a little bit. And, I know you've been in this role for a little while, but guide us through what took you to chemistry, then what took you to molecular physiology and biophysics, and how that led you to be an assistant dean for diversity and inclusion.
I always think my story starts off like so many people who are interested in science, right? So when you're young and you say you're interested in science, what do people tell you? Oh, you should be a doctor. And I think that part of that I probably came to on my own. My mom and my dad didn't like really push me towards anything, but they were very supportive of whatever it is that we wanted to do. And my mom was really also very intentional about making sure that we got to see Black people who were in our everyday lives. So my pediatrician was Dr. Corey. I still remember her, was a Black woman, and I just loved Dr. Corey. And so, I liked kids. And so I'm gonna grow up and be a pediatrician. I'm gonna be a doctor. This is what I told everyone. And so I had a mentor when I was in 11th, 12th grade, because my brother played football and he ended up getting hit. He was the quarterback. And he broke his arm and his leg in one hit. Oh, and so he ended up having to go to this orthopedic surgeon. He ended up becoming a family friend, and he also became a mentor, Dr. Brian Blue. And when I was getting ready to go to college and trying, he knew I wanted to be a doctor, and he recommended that I go the chemistry route as opposed to biology. He said, because if you decide you don't want to be a physician, it provides more options for you. And it's fine. I like chemistry. I like biology. I like both. So I said, okay. And I was a chemistry major. One of the best decisions I ever made, right? Because when I went to Florida A&M, the chemistry department, they really fed into me. Dr. Turner and Dr. Brewer later on, and all the professors, they really, at that time, I like to brag on my school. I love FAMU. And that year when I went in 1997, we were actually voted Time Magazine's College of the Year. And it was a big deal. And so they really wanted to make sure that we excelled. And one of the things I tell people about going to a HBCU, and you know this as well, I think that they put on us to be excellent because so much of the world thinks we aren't. But then they also feed into you to make sure that you can rise to the occasion. And so when I was there during my sophomore year, one of my professors approached me and said, do you want to work in a lab? And at that time, I still had this idea of who a scientist is, right? And you got people who know me know, I like to dress, I like, heels and earrings, and that just did not fit with my image of who a scientist was. But I asked them the real question that mattered. Am I gonna get paid to do this? And they said yes. And I said, well, sure, I will work in your lab. But it really changed the trajectory of my life, right? Because I ended up really enjoying it. I enjoyed that idea. And I always thought that I wanted to help people, because that's what, people tell you when they want to be a doctor, I want to help people. But I realized that by being a scientist, even though I wouldn't be in the front lines per se, I could have maybe a broader reach, right? And so I ended up pursuing research. And then when I got to the end, I still wasn't quite sure. So I decided to stay at FAM and get my master's just to make sure that that's what I wanted to do. And then I decided to go to Vanderbilt. Now, actually, I won't say I decided to go to Vanderbilt. I knew where I was going to go. But my major professor, Dr. Boulier, he was like, I was at Vanderbilt before. It's a really good school. You should consider it. And it was no fee to apply to the graduate program. And so it was nothing. I'm already doing applications. You just do the application there as well. But when I went there, I fell in love. And I remember you would go to your interview on a Friday and a Saturday, and then you leave Sunday. And by Monday at 5 o'clock, you knew whether you got in. Oh, and wow. I mean, all day, even though I knew it wasn't until 5, that's all I could think about that whole day was like, okay, I hope I got in. And it was the best feeling when I opened up that email and found out I got in. And it really was a good choice for me because, I was a chemistry major and, I moved to a different track, but it was a interdisciplinary program. So that first year you were allowed to rotate. And so I took advantage of it. I said, well, I want to try some other fields. I don't know what I like. I've always been a very open person to trying new stuff. So I rotated in pathology, and then I did do a biochemistry, and I did, who else? I don't even remember. It's so long ago. But every rotation was in a different department just so I could see what it was like and learn what I liked and what I didn't. And I really enjoyed the Dr. McGinnis's lab. And I know my friends know, they hear about Dr. McGinnis all the time because he's a really good person in my life and a great mentor. But that was it. I did not choose the lab because I'm going to get a PhD in molecular physiology and biophysics, even though everybody teases me because it does sound real fancy, right? But I chose that department because of him. I chose it because that was somebody who I knew I could have conversations with about research, but also about life. I knew that was somebody who I could talk to and say, I don't know if I really want to go the traditional route. I'm thinking of other paths. And they were like, okay, my main goal is for you to be happy in whatever you choose. And so that's how I ended up there. And so while I was there, we were very involved, and we started an organization called the Alliance for Cultural Diversity and Research. And we would go out and do outreach activities. And it's just something that I just love to do. And so I also started a program with the Vanderbilt Center for Science Outreach, and it was called the Volunteer Scientists in the Classroom. And so that was like, this is what I love. This is what I love. I love to go into these classrooms with students who a lot of times were from underrepresented backgrounds, and they got to see us and say, oh, you're a scientist? Oh, then maybe I could be a scientist too. And so when I got towards the end of my time in graduate school, I just reached out to the office and said, hey, I would like to come and have an informational with you. I want to learn, how do you get involved in offices like this? Because I'm about to graduate and this is what I think I want to do. And because I had always been working with them and doing stuff with them, when I went, they were like, well, if you want a postdoc here, then come on. And so it just happened like that, right? And so with that office, we did a lot of K through 12 outreach, and it was about changing how science is taught at that level. And I got a lot of really invaluable knowledge there, thinking about what happens in school systems, particularly school systems that are underserved. And then that led me to have an opportunity to go overseas to Abu Dhabi to help them get their STEM programs developed. And it will be considered a high school level over there, help them start doing some implementation. But I also realized that I would like to work with students after they left K through 12, and what does that look like at the college level? And so that kind of led me here to Auburn. Long story to get to that point, right? But maybe that means that I'm getting old.
All very valuable information. And I just to go back to a couple of things, I think one is important about representation, right? So people don't know how to be what they don't see. So just being present in your space helps encourage, those who are coming behind us, even just understand that they can dream bigger than themselves.
Yes.
The other thing, as you mentioned about what a scientist might look like. And so, one of the things I talk about often in this is what health equity is and how it's outside of the healthcare space, right? And so a lot of people might think a scientist is in the lab, but the scientist has lots of roles. Some of them are in the lab, but many of them are not. And you have gone kind of in this probably not a non-traditional path, but a different path than most other scientists go down. And so in this path of combining your experience as a scientist, but also your commitment to helping underrepresented populations. Tell me how those two things have come together at Auburn. So you have various student population, and we can even using COVID as an example. How has COVID and being at home affected these different populations differently, and how have you made sure that you are honing in on all of your students, but especially those who might have higher needs?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's interesting. So I came to this office because I was like, oh, this could be a really great opportunity for me to help students. But I don't think I actually realized how much an office like mine is needed at a predominantly white institution, right? Because even though I went to one for graduate school and undergrad are two different things, right? You're an adult. You might be married, you might have kids, and so it's just a different experience as opposed to your undergrad. And what I tell students, especially the students in my office, is that I try to create an HBCU experience for them while they're here at Auburn, regardless if they are Black, Indian, whatever they may be, however they may feel underrepresented. It might be because of your sexuality, your gender. But the point is that I'm talking more about what I went to before, about that feeding into you and making sure you understand that you can do whatever it is you want to do. And also trying to help you connect and find your passion. Because this is what I don't ask students what they want to be when they grow up. I ask them, what are you passionate about? Mm-hmm. And then let's figure out how we combine your passion with your profession, right? Because I think that so often we get very caught up in, even for me, I mean, I loved science and I thought being a pediatrician was cool, but I also was like, and they make a lot of money, right? Like that's what we think. But I think the older I got, I realized that while yes, you need money and money is nice, and we like to go on nice trips and do all these other things, but that is not the most important thing for me, because I spend too much time at work to be miserable just because I'm getting this paycheck, right? And so I think that has been really important, not only for the students that I work, but also, I do a lot of things with faculty and staff and just making them think about things a little bit differently. Sometimes I am the only person of color in a room. I'm the only woman in a room, and I'm there to speak up for the people who aren't there. So even when I think people are sometimes well-meaning, they don't always consider certain issues. So you said COVID, and I'll give you an example. Recently, we were in a meeting talking about what the fall may look like. And so people were talking about, well, this is what we're doing, these hybrid classes, and some of them be online, some will be in class, but we're going to require everybody to bring a laptop to class, right? And so I said, well, that makes the assumption that everybody has a laptop. And, and I think everyone's kind of like, well, yeah, no, but we can't make that assumption. And I don't care if it's only one person in that class that doesn't have one. How do you want to make that one person feel? And yes, maybe they all have a phone, but doing your work on a phone is not the same way does not give you the same access the way it does on a laptop. And also, we still can't assume everybody has the phone capability, has the data, has the whatever you need to be able to do that in a classroom setting. And I think that all these people are well-meaning, right? They're trying to come up with the best way so that you can make sure the students get everything they need, but we have to consider that. And so, what it led us to was like finding out, oh, the bookstore has laptops that they can loan out to students, and they have hotspots and they have this. And so we're going to put that on our syllabus for the students, so nobody has to say it out loud if they need it. It's on Canvas, so you know if you need it and how to get it. But if we wouldn't have had that conversation, that would have never happened, right? Until somebody had that unfortunate experience that they could not do their work. Or we have students who sometimes, in the past where you don't find out till a month in the school, they couldn't afford to get their book. So now they're a month behind. So these are the types of things, and I think that COVID has brought these inequities out even more, right? We're in Alabama. You have a lot of rural areas. Do they have access to Wi-Fi so they can get on and be on their classes? These are things that we have to think about. And I think that we weren't forced to before, because especially at the school at Auburn, we have a lot of wealthy students. But there are also a lot of students who aren't. But a lot of times you can hide this, right? Nobody has to know. Mm-hmm. Nobody has to know what your socioeconomic status is. And so that means that unless you open your mouth and say something, then you can be missing out on critical things that you need so that you can be successful. And so I think that through the conversations I have, by being able to go into the classrooms, being able to talk to professors, I've made a space in my office where people feel comfortable coming to me to talk about those things so that we can make sure they get the help that they need.
Just to follow up with that, and I think this is super important right now. You mentioned being sometimes the only woman of color, the only woman, whatever you're the only of, right? And sometimes having to have those difficult conversations. And we're seeing a lot of information on social media and on mainstream media and in print about organizations and corporations and academic institutions who are supportive of the things that have come up around the inequities as related to COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement and all these things that are happening right now. But the question for you is, how do you have those difficult conversations when they come up with peers, with colleagues, but also with, hierarchical superiors, if you will? How do you manage that as an individual?
Well, I think for those who know me, know that I don't necessarily hold my tongue. And so I think one of the things, and I actually was having this conversation with someone earlier today, one of the things that has been beneficial for me in the role that I'm currently in, I think because I am actually a scientist, even though we just know in academia, there's some elitism that goes on in these fields, right? And I think because I'm a scientist, it gives me some credence, even though I don't work in a lab and I don't do that work. But, people care about these types of things, right? It helps them decide who they're going to listen to. So, to be able to say that I have a PhD from Vanderbilt, even though I tell people all the time when they get impressed by that, we're in the SEC, right? But I always say, well, you need to be impressed by that degree from Florida A&M, right? That degree from Florida A&M got me to Vanderbilt. And so I think that's the ground zero that allows me to step in the room and people to look to me and say, well, maybe she knows what she's talking about. But also, while I have no problem being direct, I have this personality that is no nonsense. And I think that I tell people all the time, like, you don't have to like me, but you will respect me, right? But I also, one of the things that I really did when I got here, I was listened. I don't come in here and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about the issues in your department. Let's talk about the issues in this college. And even when I'm talking about diversity and equity and inclusion with different departments, I don't say, well, you need more Black people, or you need more this, or you need more that, because I always tell them, like, y'all have to decide this. I'm here to help you with the tools, and I'm here to assist you with the way that you want to go, but you have to decide what you want. Because, see, I could say you need to hire 10 more Black people, but if y'all didn't decide that's what you want to do and I don't have buy-in, then when we bring those Black people here, are they going to be met with a climate that's going to be conducive for them to be successful? So it's really about, for me right now, and what I've been doing in this work is listening to people, have them listen to me and let them know, like, because I think for the most part, I will say I have not been met with resistance. I think everybody kind of, yes, we need to do better, but we just don't know how. So if you tell me that, I can help you figure that out. I know how to do this, right? And so I think that it really has been about, one, making sure people understand that when I'm coming to you, I'm not just saying something because I don't have any knowledge behind the work that I'm doing. But also that I'm going to listen to you and listen to what you think your needs are. And then I'm going to let you know, where from the outside looking in, what I see. And let's see where we can meet in the middle so that we can do better. And now that I have all these ideas, all the time. The people who work in my office are like, Lord, here she come again with more ideas, right? But I will say that with everything that's been going on, you know, I reached out to my dean. I have a very good relationship with him. And, you know, I was able to talk to him and say, look, first of all, we need to come, you need to send a message and let them know where we stand as COSAM and what we will and will not tolerate, right? But then after that message was sent, yeah, words are nice. Where's the action? And so, you know, originally I'm an office of 3, and then, you know, I have some like maybe 5 or 6 students that work in there, but really 3 full-time people and a graduate student, and then a lot of undergrads. But when we put the call out and said it's time to do the work, I was overwhelmed by the response that I received. And so I laugh and say my office of 3 has now swelled to an office of 50. And I love it because we're ready to do the work. And so I think that I think that people knew, no, I'm not gonna say I think, I know that people knew there were inequities, but I think sometimes too, particularly for people who aren't of color, I think sometimes there is a fear of if I want to do this, how do I go about this? I'm scared. I don't, you know, even coming into a space, you know, where you may be one of the only ones that's uncomfortable. That's not for us. We have to deal with this all the time. We're in STEM, we're in science, like I'm used to being the only one. But now it's time for you to be uncomfortable. It's time for you to step up. I can't do this work alone. And so these are the kind of conversations I have with people all the time. And I think that because we can have discourse, civil discourse, we can agree to disagree, but I think that I never leave a conversation where I haven't at least given somebody something to think about and how we can be better. And so I'm excited with what has come about and with this overwhelming response from our college to see where we can be in the next 5 years because of the things that we're going to put in place now.
And that's so, I think you said lots of wonderful things.
Well, I say lots of things all the time, right? We're like, Kim, shut up.
But I think the listening component, I think, is huge. I mean, I think that's something we as people have gotten away from, and not listening to people and understanding where we're coming from and then trying to build on that. And so it doesn't matter if we're coming from a different place. It doesn't matter if you don't understand my past experience. We don't have to have a shared experience for us to be able to have a conversation about it and help everybody involved be better and do better. And so I'm encouraged to hear that when you put out the call, people were willing to take up the action and are going to work on doing the work. So with that, as we kind of come to a close, what are you most optimistic about? So, I mean, we have so much opportunity here, right? People are talking, we are engaging, we're listening. Hopefully we're understanding what the inequities are. So what are you optimistic? Where do you think we're going to go from here?
Well, that's really what I'm so optimistic about, right? Like the fact that people are stepping up and not being afraid to have these difficult conversations. You know, they're being willing to call a thing and discuss it. And so I will say that when everything first happened, especially I think it was really one particular morning when I woke up and I saw that CNN reporter getting arrested. I don't know if you were familiar with that day, but it was, you know, he was being arrested and, you know, it's basically for reporting while Black.
Right.
And I think it was just such a tipping point where it's just that day, I was done, right? Like it made me feel so helpless. And it makes you wonder, like, when are people going to actually see us as human beings? Because I know that my degrees do not protect me from anything. Because nobody, when they see me, I don't walk around with Dr. Mulligan on my chest, right? You know, so when they see me, all they see is a Black woman. And they don't know anything else about me until they decide whether they want to have a conversation with me. But when we did put out that call and I saw people step up, and I will say, don't get it wrong. Like there were people who were stepping up before this, right? But it was more like okay, I want to do this. Were y'all willing to come help me? Yes, of course, we'll help you. Oh, you need some money? Yes, we'll help you. But it wasn't like, oh, we're coming in with some ideas now. We're ready to set some goals. We're ready to do this. And so to see that, and I think in particular from the young people,
Mm-hmm.
I will, I love my students. I love these kids. I love working with this population. I think they keep me young, but I vacillate between sometimes like, oh, the world is in good hands because these kids are so courageous, and they're like, oh Lord, what are we gonna do? Because sometimes I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the next generation. But no, seriously, like to see so many young people like find their voice and not be afraid and say, I want to step up. To see how many students, when everything happened, the number of white students that sent me an email and said, Dr. Mulligan, we appreciate everything you do. Please let me know how we can help. What can we do? That's impactful, right? Because, while my office is for everyone, this is what I tell people, it's for everybody. Because when we're talking about diversity are differences. And so all of us have something to bring to this table. But I still think that sometimes people see that word and it's like black and white, right? And so just to see everybody just say, we're not going to stand for this. We're not going to stand for this. We're not going to stand for this for Black people. We're not going to stand for this for trans people. We're not going to stand for this for women. We are ready to fight, and to see so many kids out there being tear gassed, but still coming back. I mean, I hate that it's happening, but also I believe that this is a real change. I don't feel like we've seen anything like this since the civil rights movement, right? And so I'm so excited. I'm excited for what this means for not just Auburn or not just the US, but really the whole world. And how are we going to make sure that we capitalize on the fact that people are so willing to work and do the work right now? So that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
that's exciting.
It's exciting times. It's scary times, but also exciting times. I think we have a lot to look forward to, and we have wonderful leadership and people like you who are guiding our next generation. So we appreciate you and all the work that you do, and thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And I just want to say this before I get off. I have been listening to the Reede Scholar, I think, since you started, and I really, really love this podcast because I think that it really does shine a light on so many things that people don't have to think about. And I go back to what I said before about doctors always saying, or when you ask students they want to be a doctor, why do they want to be a doctor? Because they want to help people. But you give them some real tangible ways that they can help. You give them some real tangible ways to think about, like when you say you want to help people, have you considered this? Have you thought about the maternal mortality rate for Black women? Have you thought about how this Hispanic population may be impacted by what's going on and how you're going to deal with that? And so I'm very honored to be on here with so many illustrious guests that you've had previously, and I'm excited to see what happens next.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support, and I couldn't do this without very supportive friends and colleagues like yourself. So thank you.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. So good being here.
Thank you for listening to Reede Scholars Live. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube